Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Innovators Livecast series. My name is Diana Dilworth. I am the managing editor here at Brand Innovators. We have a really exceptional lineup of marketing leaders being featured today during our international livecast, Travel and Hospitality Summit. Brands such as the City of Venice, the New York State Tourism Association, Internova Travel Group, and MasterCard Europe. We encourage you to engage with today's speakers by asking questions through the chat widget as well as on Twitter and LinkedIn using the hashtag BILivecast. Without further ado, I'm thrilled to welcome our first speakers of the day. We have Simone Venturini, who's the Deputy Mayor of Venice, and Alberto Bozzo, the Director of Market Development and Sales in Venice, as well as Cheryl Beyer, CEO of Living Pop-Ups.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good.
Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. We are excited to hear the story and learn more about the City of Venice and the activations you are doing. I know Cheryl will be joining us as well. We're just getting a message where we're just waiting on Cheryl.
Yeah.
So welcome, and how is the weather today in Venice?
It's good, not so hot, and it's perfect, windy, and very good.
Very nice.
Yeah, we're enjoying the beginning of summer in a very nice way. Yeah, it's not very hot, not very humid, very fine.
That's very nice. That's very nice. It's been some nice weather in Europe this week. Some rain, but definitely not as hot as it was last summer.
Yeah,
of course.
It's a very important week for Venice because it's a fashion week. We have Yves Saint Laurent and Valentino with a fashion show, and then the Redentore Feast, the fireworks all over the lagoon. So it's a wonderful party for the city of Venice.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's one of the most interesting and awaited show in the year. It's probably the most close to the heart of the Venetian, and of course, everybody are coming to see this fireworks show because it lasts more than 40 minutes and is over the lagoon, so you can imagine the effects on the water.
Oh, I can imagine. It's so beautiful. And is this tied to any specific event? Or any historical significance? Is this?
Yeah, we celebrate the end of the Black Fever in the whole past of Venice. So after the peace, the Black Fever, and we make a vow to the god. And we say that every year we will do a procession in the Church of Redentore, and then a big party all over the city.
Interesting. Even more impactful this year, I would imagine.
That's correct. It's very linked to the actual time.
Very interesting. And this is also your 16-year anniversary, correct?
60th century, so yes.
1600.
Correct.
Yes.
421 and 2021, 1600 years of history in Venice.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very important year for the city because around this celebration, we built a series of specific events, but also all the major events of the city are taking a very specific spin around the 1600 years, taking with us all these key stakeholders of the cities, so the museum, all the artisans, the commerce, all the stakeholders of the city are celebrating this year, and it's a celebration that lasts an entire year because it will end up on the 25th of March 2022.
Very interesting. And I can imagine it's just a year for celebrating after, such an iconic anniversary, and then with the city reopening and being more open to travel, being more open to, we lost you there for a sec. Being more open to welcoming visitors and guests. I know it's, with people being home over the last year and a half and not traveling as much, and now with people going on vacation and getting out, it's definitely an interesting time to regain.
Yeah, we are recovering very. It's a very slow process because it's a gradual process. The first the Italians, then the Europeans, and then Americans, Japanese, and international, intercontinental friends. But we are trying to restart the city after the pandemic and after also the high tide, the flows that happened in 2019. So we have two very big punch in our face, but I think that we are still on our feet, and we are doing a very important job to keep the city alive and to keep the business running, and to also to change the model to a more sustainable tourism and more friendly to the city. So it's also a challenge to start better than before and not as the same as before.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that Venice has this phenomenon that when we had the opportunity to reopen and restart, it was a step up in the sense that people, of course, a different kind of tourism, as Simone said, the Italians first, and then all the surrounding areas with Switzerland, Germany, France, Croatia, etc. But they come immediately, and so we had, especially during the weekends, the city really full of people enjoying in a very special way, I would say, Venice, not anymore hyper crowded of people, but in a way that they can really experience the city more calm. And hopefully what we hope from the administration point of view, in a more slow way, really taking advantage of all the beauties of the city and not necessarily the most let's say, relevant monuments like San Marco Square, like Rialto, that are very important, but taking advantage of getting lost, as we say, into the city and really experience the real emotions of our city.
Excellent. I love that, experiencing emotions. I've definitely been lost in some of those alleys and seen some of the beauty of the architecture and whatnot. And I'm curious, what is going on with the fashion project this week? What does that look like? Like, who is coming to the city for that, and how is that being activated?
Yeah, we just had two important appointments in May and June, in the beginning of restart when all the country opened, and two important events: the Biennale of Architecture. It's a very important moment for the city, and the boat show. So in May and June, we had a very two crowded but very beautiful people coming in Venice and want to enjoy these two important events. And then we are working to link more Venice to fashion brands and to the beauty. And we just hosted yesterday a very important show of Yves Saint Laurent at Certosa Island. We have a very important also artistic installation in the middle of the island. And this night we will have also a Valentino show. So the haute couture, normally they host in Paris this kind of show. Now we're bringing to Venice. And in August, Dolce & Gabbana, 3 entire days in all the city around with artisan and artists, and they show of their creation. So it's a very strong bond that we are working right now with the fashion group and fashion brands, also because Venice is very inspiring in this moment. So a lot of creative, a lot of stylists, now they are able to find important inspiration in Venice in this moment. And a lot of creation are inspired in Venice also for fashion brands.
I will add that after Dolce & Gabbana, we will have, of course, the movie festival in Lido. And during that week, particularly on the 6th, we're going to have Golden Goose also with a specific show into the San Marco Basin.
And Alberta Ferretti too.
So we're really attracting the fashion show at this point.
So people are coming back in this ways. I remember last year looking at some of the fashion shows, and they were more, just the models or just the clothes, with no audiences, and or maybe very, very small audiences. So what is it looking like this year? Are people allowed to come back? What are the regulations looking like? Do they have to wear masks? Are they spacing, or is it more open now with vaccines being more widely distributed?
Yeah, there is more people. Of course, it's not a very huge crowd for the issues that you very well know, but is more participant than the last year. So you will have also a streaming live session, but in presence there will be a lot of people, journalists, artists, stylists, models, and authorities, and a lot of people. So it's a very important also for the economy of the city, because a lot of people is coming in Venice for participate to this show. So it's not only a streaming live show, it's a physical show with a lot of guests.
Interesting. And so with this series of events, it feels like this spirit of people coming back to Venice, and what does this mean for the business community? Obviously, these are fashion houses and brands coming back to the city to do these events. How are brands engaging with the city again?
Yeah, we are trying to find a way to work together, not only for a week or a day or 2 weeks, but to become friends during the long period. So we are working to find a new collaboration, new cooperation between the city and the brands, not only to host the Fashion Week, but also to stay here, produce with a local artisan, and communicate with a local voice. And this is a thing that we will see in the Dolce & Gabbana events, because they are here since I think May, and they are working a lot with the local artisan to do their creation. So it's a new way also for the city, not only to be a box where something happened, but to be the protagonist, the first actor of this kind of new collaboration, new cooperation. Also to bring new jobs in town, to bring new ideas, new business model, and to talk about sustainability, because Venice was named 1 day ago, I think, in Sunday, the capital of sustainability in Italy. And we have now built a foundation to work on around of this topic, and a lot of important companies like Eni, Generali, is very important Italian group on all the business, energy, bank, insurance, and more, are working with the city to try new way to develop a business, local business, sustainable, green, of course, modern, and innovate the process. So it's a very important moment for the city. I was talking about a new spring in Venice. So it's a new spring where a lot of people is coming and say, I have an idea. And we say, yes, we can work with you to find a new way to restart Venice, because save Venice is not only a physical matter of stones and monuments and statues and other building, but is also important issues of preserving the life, the jobs, the sociality, the tradition, the soul of the city. The city is not only stones, but is also souls. So we are trying to keep the soul running and attract more ideas, more brands, more creative, more people, more young people to stay in Venice and live Venice.
I love
especially in the world of today, where you can also work from anywhere, and we learned it even more and more during the pandemic. Venice want to attract talents, want to attract ideas, as Simone said, want to attract companies, big companies, but also new startups that have great ideas. And I have to say, this administration has put in place all the infrastructure, all the steps to help those companies to come and establish here and create jobs for the future. Because as we said, Venice if you study the story of what the Republic Serenissima did over 800 and more years of history, it's really discovering that a lot of methods, a lot of ideas. Just an example, the insurance business has been invented in Venice. When the big vessel were leaving Venice to go and conquer the Mediterranean, to commerce with the spices and jewels, etc., over the east or far east, they decided that to finance those vessels, they had to insure. And so they create a kind of bank insurance, and the business started from there. But there are so many examples that we can take from the past and project it into the future that can give really spinning ideas and means to really establish business in Venice, establish new ideas and new opportunities in Venice.
It's so fantastic, the history. I mean, that you've established insurance, that's like a huge industry that we all participate in, that it goes back to your history of boats and covering business in that way. And I love, Simone, what you said about the soul of the people and bringing that connection back. Can you talk about how you're connecting this legacy to what comes next and the future? Because obviously Venice has this very, very rich history in markets and in business, and where it comes from and how you're connecting this to what the future looks like.
So I think that we are bringing Venice in the new era. So it's not only a nostalgic way to look at Venice. Like we say, hey, once a time we ruled the world, we ruled the sea, we defeated a lot of population, we were the capital of merchants and market. But this is only a historical and nostalgic way. I think that now Venice has all the quality to be a very modern city. Yes, it's like an oxymoron to say Venice is a modern city. Venice is one of the oldest towns in the world, and still in the same physical situation as it was in 60th centuries or 50 or in another era, medieval time. But it's a very modern city. It's a city where you can have a very high quality of life, because you have no car, you have to walk. You can walk around all the city in 20 minutes time. So it's a very small city, but it's linked to the world. Every day, in every hour, you will have an event, a cultural manifestation, a concert, a representation, international guest, presentation of a book. So it's a city really full of initiative, also for cultural and interesting, but is also in the middle of an important industrial area, Veneto region, where there is the most important production on a lot of business and a lot of products. So Veneto region is the second important region for industry and economics in all Italy. And Venice is the capital. So we are in the middle on a very important triangle with the port, the airport. So you can live in a beautiful living room like Venice. I think the most beautiful living room in all the world. But you have in just half an hour of a train or car, you are in the heart of the industrial center of Italy. So it's a very well-connected city, and we are trying to bring it also a digital city to attract also digital business under the stones, the 1,000-year stones. And now there is the fiber optic cable. So it's all cable with high-speed internet, and is one of the most covered city for high-speed internet in Europe. So it's a very important investment that the city made to be one of the most advanced city with digital infrastructure. So I think Venice can be a new discover for a lot of people. because the world thinks Venice as a museum is a living city and can be also a capital for businesses, ideas, and research, university, and a new way to do business with a green approach and sustainability as a goal, the main goal.
And I will add that the more and more on what Simone just said, the university that we have in Venice are very well known and probably top notch if we look at the Italian and also European landscape. What we want to do is we want to give all these young people the opportunity not just to come to Venice to study, but to come to Venice to study and then have the opportunity to stay for years and develop their ideas in a city that offer really what we just said, tons of culture, tons of inspiration, quality of life, and infrastructure to be able to easily settle down, stay, and work properly from Venice.
I love that connection that you're talking about, building this digital infrastructure, also the infrastructure of university, so that you're bringing the talent and cultivating that long-term relationship with the future leaders and the future innovators. And I think it's very incredible that you have that designation also as the sustainability leader in Venice. What is the driving factor, do you think, behind wanting to be so cutting edge and innovative within the city, and in what ways is it being manifested within the business community there?
But one of the aspects, and just making the example of what happened just 1 week ago, Venice hosted the G20 of economy. So all the governor of the central banks of the G20 and all the delegation, all the ministers, they were in Venice. And this has been one really key examples of what the city can do to host these global events, to host the global events in a safe way, inspiring contents, and then linking to your question, the sustainability aspect. The city has to be the example. Think about sustainability for mobility. The city is living and I would say breathing on water every single day. Everything moves on water in Venice. The public transportation boats, the private boats, the working boats, the ambulances, the fire department, everything moves on boats. The opportunity of the city is really to raise the attention at the global level and to be the example in showing that it's not a future technology moving to eco-sustainability technology on water, but it's possible today. We cover a little bit later on the ideas that we had with the administration around the boat show and what we accomplished this year, which is something really that left the sign and project ourselves in 2022 with even bigger events concentrating on hydrogen, so hybrid transportation, but especially on electric transportation.
Yes, tell me more about the boat show and what the idea was behind that. I know obviously being a city that's built on water, boat transportation is huge to connecting people.
Yeah, so the idea started, of course, from the mayor of Venice. It started at the end of 2018, and it gave us the task, together with Simone and all the administration, and Vela, which is the sales and marketing power arm of the municipality, to develop a boat show in this side of the Adriatic, which, to be honest, if you look from the Adriatics, from Venice, I would say to Lebanon, there is no major international boat show. But the idea was not to build a boat show to show the current technology, to have a showcase of the current technology, but to build a boat show that really put the accent on the future. On the future, but giving the example today of what is available, showing the way. And then when we did that, we started in 2019 with the first edition. Of course, we started small, but it was very well received. And a lot of international companies, so the most important Italian shipyards, but also international shipyards participated. So we had to stop in 2020, of course, as everybody can imagine, because we couldn't do it because of the pandemic. But then we restarted, and of course, we didn't stop working on that. And so we had a great success because just by the end of May this year till the 6th of June, we accomplished 9 days, 9 full days of what we call Mostra di Architettura Navale. So we were showing the architectural navy. So basically involving all the major shipyards, but involving also the major technological companies that are involved into the production of electric engines, battery solutions, electronics, onboard piloting electronics, and also recharging stations. So we had ABB, just to name one, as our technical sponsors. But the city has started already, I would say more than 18 months ago, to put together pilot of infrastructure of recharging technology into the lagoon. This to facilitate the adoption of electric boats. And we are now at the second stage. These recharging stations are growing. And so we're following all the adoption curve that we all know of the car industry that happened in the United States, of course, probably earlier than in Europe, but also Europe now, and even Italy, is really permeated with all these recharging stations, and the electric car industry is really taking off very rapidly. The boat industry will take off even more rapidly because we know that the adoption curve every time accelerates, as it did with the fridge and the color TV that took so many years, so then accelerating every year. And so this is the opportunity of Venice, because it's not just the pollution, it's making waves. And waves are destroying the city. So we had one example with us, which was Candela. Candela is a Swedish company. So we show the technology, which is a mix between full electric engine and the foil technology. The foil technology, we saw it in America's Cup. All these catamarans flying over the water and not even touching the water, which means this combination make zero waves, not just zero pollution, zero waves when it flies. And so these are just few examples of what we did. And that was really, in my opinion, but also in the opinion of the exhibitors, a great success. We had more than 50 electric boats. And when I'm talking about boats, I want to be sure that I don't get misunderstood, because we had 22 meters boats. So Green Line Yachts from Croatia is building super yacht, ocean class yachts that have a thermic engine, so the classical engine, but it can run into the port, into the harbor with a full electric system. It recharges as it goes. He has a solar panel everywhere. We had the hydrogen catamarans and all kinds of solutions. This created a massive amount of, let's say, emotion and attention at the worldwide level. So this is one call to action to all our participants here. Venice is really ready to welcome you next year at the boat show, either as visitors, of course, as exhibitors in case, because we want really to put to keep the feet on the pedal, let's say, on this evolution. Once again, this means one of the means to Venice as global capital of eco-sustainability. And we used to say also, we are the most ancient city of the future.
I love that. And it's interesting, obviously we're hearing a lot from consumers and people who are in the business community and people who are traveling. They're looking and they want to make choices that are more sustainable, that are more eco-friendly, because obviously people still want to go on vacation, but we understand that, we don't want to have the same footprint as maybe we have in the past. Can you talk about ways that you are making people aware that Venice will offer this sustainable opportunity, and how you're communicating that to, people who would be traveling and even to the business community?
I think that we need to communicate better, even better, because we are just starting to communicate the reopen of the city. And with Alberto and the events of the Salone Boat Show, is the first time that we try to launch a global message to all the world to focus on Venice, like the capital and the city where the biggest change are possible, and we are making them. So it's just the first step on this new road of communication. And I think that we need a big help for the companies, from you, from the foreign press, for the social media, because I think that Venice is a global issue. I think that all the world has the duty to save the city, to preserve it, not only the stones, but also the soul, we just said it. And I think that we are all aware that Venice is the most exposed city to sea level rising, to plastic problem on the ocean, to all the main topic that are discussing right now in all the biggest convention on the world. So I think that all companies and countries and intellectual groups can find in Venice like a research field, because if a thing works in Venice, we work everywhere. So I think that the company has also the opportunity to try something in a small area, because we are a small city, 260,000 inhabitants, so very small city compared with New York, Moscow, or London. But it's, I think, the most complex city in the world, of course. So it's a very small field of a research field where we can try a lot of new technologies, but also a lot of new models, and we can also then export them all over the world. So we have a big opportunity to try to invite all companies that has idea, initiative, and project to talk with us, and we will find a way to cooperate and try to put some roof in the city and try to grow some fruits, and then export this fruit all over the world. So I think that Venice now has also this kind of the opportunity to offer to other friends, our companies, and your friend too.
But also some inspiring ideas and things that has been done in the city, like the rubbish, the garbage. Venice is the #1 in Italy for recycling. We basically do and collect all the garbage door to door to every single house in Venice. It appears a massive amount of work. It is, but it's very well structured, and it is, in my opinion, but also in the opinion of many, many leaders, one best-in-class examples at the national level. It may be an example at the international level. The other thing, Simone mentioned Eni. Eni in Porto Marghera was the, they call it black energy production, but also they recycle a lot of their factories to produce from fried oil. They produce biodiesel. Those are key examples. With Eni, we had the first hydrogen distribution station in Venice, in Marghera. So those are things that, as Simone said, we need to start to communicate better. Of course, we need all your help, we need the press help, but Venice can get inspiration, but also give a lot of inspiration, because I don't want to make too much advertising, but this administration is a fact-based administration. So we decide to do things, we do things, we make them happen.
And of course, Venice is not only the historical city that the world knows, of course, but it's also a mainland city with a big industrial area, Porto Marghera, with a big port of Venice. And I think that also big companies that works on big factories and industrial sites and compounds can find their place here too. So not only the historical building, not only the artistic topics, but also in real hard industrial, real hard logistic, real also true a concrete production can find a place here, because it's I think the most based area, industrial area in all Italy, Porto Marghera. It was founded in the first years of the centuries, in the 19th centuries, during the just after the First World War, and it's a very, very big industrial area, and with a lot of place to reinvent and where you can find also place to put very important compounds and production factory.
Silvana, that we want to show a video, but before introducing the video, I want to say a couple of words of what you're going to see. So what you're going to see here is some images of the just last finished Venice Boat Show, which has been held into the Arsenale. Arsenale was really the arsenal of the Republic Serenissima. Republic Serenissima, so this monumental place is 50,000 square meters of water with a lot of industrial, when I'm saying industrial areas, are industrial areas of 600, 700, 800 years ago. The Venice Republic Serenissima was building all the fleet, all the commercial and fleets there, and they were able to build a 45 meters boat every single day. How they did it, this is a miracle. They were working on a lean production. They were building all the components of the boats in a separate production areas, and then they were assembling the final product at the end of the chain, which Leonardo da Vinci visited, for instance, the Arsenale, and it was inspired by that. So what we want to show there is really these 9 days in 1.4 minutes. So please show the video. So thank you. I hope you enjoy it.
Fantastic. I loved it. And it's making me want to go to Venice and check out the boats and ride on the boats. And yes, and I know we've talked about, like, bringing our Brand Innovators events. Now that we're slightly starting to return to in person, we would love to come to Venice and hope that our community of brand marketers will come with us.
And Arsenale can be a very good location for your meeting, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
G20 just took place there. So.
Yeah, Mark visited us in 2019. Sorry. He met the mayor, and we promised each other to really do something big in Venice for you and for the marketeers community around the world. So we're really here to help. As you've seen, the boat show, end of May, beginning of June, we had more than 30,000 visitors. Everything has been managed according to all the protocol of security, safety, pandemics. Everything worked fine. We had very good discipline, and we showed the entire world. That was the first in-person event after the opening of the Biennale 1 week before that demonstrated the capacity of this city to organize big, major events according to the protocols in a total safe way.
This is just fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure having you, and we look forward to the next conversation, and hopefully it will be in person.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Ciao. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao. 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 Bye.
Bye. Okay, next up, We are taking a bit of a detour, and we would like to invite Bob Provost, who's the CEO of the New York State Tourism Association, and Peter Jones, the head of sales and strategic partnerships at Premium. Please join me in welcoming Bob and Peter.
Hey, good morning. How are we doing?
Good morning. Hi, Peter.
Good morning, and how's everyone?
Fantastic. I'll let you two take it away.
All right, thanks a lot. Good morning, Bob. How you doing?
I am well. Peter, yourself?
Doing great, thank you. And good morning to you, and good afternoon to our friends across the pond. I think this is a very timely Brand Innovators event, so I'm great that we get to be a part of it. I just feel like there's all this pent up demand that we've had over the past year. Me and my family have already done kind of our first family vacation this year that did include a 15-hour car ride. So I wouldn't recommend that if you are looking at doing a vacation. But Bob, so we know that there's been like a significant impact to the travel industry over the past year in the pandemic, but we are seeing this remarkable like resurgence in travel headed into especially the summer months. What can you tell us about the mission and the role of the New York State Tourism Industry Association during this recovery?
Well, I think you need to recognize New York State among all of the various states in the United States was somewhat uniquely impacted. And that is because of the prevalence of international visitation to the state of New York. We suffered an overall loss of 54% decline in travel spending. And with that comes a 45% decline in tax revenues for local and state government, of course. But that decline puts us in total dollars in the top 3 nationally. And percentage-wise, it puts us in the top 3, but we're the only state that makes both. So we were one of the top dollar losses in travel spending and one of the most heavily impacted as a percentage of total. And most of that impact hit us, unfortunately, in New York City, where 2 out of 3 travel dollars in New York State get spent. And they are hugely dependent on the traffic that comes in through JFK, Newark Liberty International, and LaGuardia. A lot of that is international. So it was difficult. Our role in this is to basically convene the industry. The day after New York paused, the New York State Tourism Industry Association held their first ever total state video chat with the TPAs, or tourism promotion agencies, representing each of the 62 counties. And we held that program every week right through the entire New York pause and into New York reopening, making sure that our members got all the information they needed on the progress of both the health crisis and the government regulations and restrictions as they changed and evolved over time right through reopening. That process, and like many things people discovered as they innovated to respond to the crisis, has become a routine now. We have a monthly call that involves all of the TPAs, and after our I Love New York update each month, that evolves into a full membership meeting to share evolving information, not just about the pandemic, but about the industry. We had, I think, an unprecedented motivation that brought people together to share best practice, talk about how they were coping in their local markets. And I think, I don't want to diminish or dismiss certainly the efforts of the healthcare community and our healthcare providers during the crisis. But I would like to draw some attention to the work of our tourism marketers, who immediately pivoted to, instead of marketing to the visitors, marketing to the residents and trying to support the local businesses. As you know, most local businesses, or most tourism related businesses, are not your big box stores. They're the unique local restaurant, the giftique, the boutique, the craft store, the winery, and they pivoted very quickly to encourage residents to spend now and shop later, buy gift certificates at local businesses during the pandemic, and shop when it's safe to do so, but give these folks an opportunity to survive and provide some immediate revenue. Entire websites were developed not only for the purchase of gift certificates, but to facilitate communications and connections with local restaurants that were offering curbside pickup and delivery services throughout the state. It was really just inspiring. And in addition, and you'll like this, there was a lot of video produced and a lot of video re-edited in order to enable our residents to explore their backyard. When they couldn't leave their home, they could still explore what was in the neighborhood, what was around town. And in many cases, our residents found out things that they never knew about their own community or the community nearby.
That's incredible. And I think your key word there in the same word that I think we used in our prior conversation was, having the businesses having to pivot.
Exactly.
So you had shared your website. I read the message about your new trademark, tourism. It's everybody's business. Can you kind of elaborate on the travel advocacy message that's on your site?
Okay. Yes. As you know, I Love New York is New York State's brand and its theme for travelers. And we are, the New York State Tourism Industry Association, the private sector partner for the I Love New York folks. We work hand in hand. The head of I Love New York sits ex officio on our board of directors. Ross Levi, who is that individual, speaks at every one of our TPA meetings and membership meetings. And we developed in the midst of the pandemic a new identity, and it was somewhat inspired by what we saw. And that was to replace the O in tourism with a heart. And if you'd like, I can share that with you. And by sharing screen, bear with me for a second. So that gives you, wrong screen. Hang on a second.
We see the logo, it's up there.
You see it? Okay. In any case, tourism, it's everybody's business, is our advocacy theme, but the word tourism with a heart in it, as of 2 days ago, we received official recognition of trademark from the United States government. And the reason we like it isn't just the fact that it ties back to I Love New York and indicates that we represent the same area, but it literally puts the heart in tourism and speaks to what tourism is really all about. Tourism is not a goal. That's the key to our advocacy message. Tourism is a means by which many other wonderful things are achieved. And people talk about economic growth. We talk about advancing economic growth, but we're more keyed to advancing job creation, small business success, community revitalization, the standard of living, but also the quality of living and pride of place for the resident in the community. The ultimate customer of tourism from our perspective is the resident. And the traveler is, our partner in making good things happen. The other thing that we need to drive home, New York State is not a small place. Just in sheer area, it's a little bit bigger than Greece or England. It's about 55,000 square miles. And there are so many opportunities to do things, and the industry is huge. It's the third largest industry in the state of New York, outside of New York City, where the financial market, number one, is dominant. In the other counties to the north of New York City, it's often the number one industry, if not number two after agriculture. There's $72 billion spent by travelers in the state of New York in 2019. They generated $118 billion in total economic impact, created or supported 960,000 jobs for our residents, and contributed also $39 billion in personal income. So it's big business. And that's the second message we need to get across, because tourism amongst our legislative leadership and other parts of the business community, it gets no respect. And out of consideration for the fact that I may be a little parochial here and reference a comic icon that may not be relevant to everybody, Rodney Dangerfield, who is a iconic figure in American comedy, always said, "I get no respect." Well, tourism gets no respect, despite being not only big business in the state of New York, it is an exceptional contributor to the state's economic engine. But people don't think of tourism as business. And that also leads us to the phrase, "it's everybody's business." We need to drive home to the local resident that tourism isn't just about parking issues and lines at the restaurant and traffic. It's about jobs and small businesses in your community and facilities that wouldn't exist if it weren't for tourism. Some of the iconic names that might be recognized elsewhere around the world, Saratoga Racecourse, the most attended race meet in the state of New York. It's opening today for visitors for the first time since the pandemic started. So great timing for today's call. But also the Baseball Hall of Fame here, Broadway wouldn't exist if it weren't for tourists. New York City's theater programs and many other of our destinations around the state of New York are heavily dependent on that. I also would like to, kind of draw attention to the fact that New York is heavily investing in the future of tourism and making the state not just a better place to live, but a better place to visit with a number of our assets. I last week attended the grand opening of the new Legoland Resort in New York State, the largest Legoland park in the world, and covers 600 acres. But at the same time, I spent most of the day yesterday online talking to people about the creation of a new national marine sanctuary on Lake Ontario on the shoreline of New York State. And 2 weeks ago, I was in Chautauqua at the National Comedy Center, which was opened in 2018 and named one of the top 10 family attractions in the world that year. So there's a lot going on.
Exciting stuff going on. I want to tie 2 points together. So you mentioned some percentages of impact early on, and you were mentioning you were kind of hitting some big revenue numbers, like $72 billion worth of spending was one number I heard. So, how big is that New York travel market, and what was the impact on the local economy? You kind of hit some of those numbers, and then going out, and we can see you still got your screen up. Yep. And then, how do you see that changing post-pandemic?
I think, first of all, during the pandemic, we lost about half. We also lost nearly 330,000 jobs.
Wow.
The impact on the individual, 34% of the tourism employment was lost during this process. And that heavily impacted the state of New York, obviously, but the people of New York. And one of the things we discussed was our campaign in the context of this to get people to roam the empire. For those who don't know it, New York State has a heritage recognition as the Empire State. And we got a little playful with that, working with one of our members, Mower Advertising and Marketing firm, that did a fantastic job creating a pro bono campaign for all of our members. In fact, we made it available even to organizations that were not members to sign up and get involved in a campaign urging New Yorkers to explore their home state, not just during the pandemic, but in all of 2021. That has been just enormously well received, and it follows up on that exploration and discovery process that I talked about during the pandemic, where people created so much online video content and games and puzzles and other things to enable people to explore their communities. This is a call for folks to plan travel in-state during 2021 to help not only restore jobs, but to restore vitality to communities, to enable small businesses to survive, and to restore the tax funding that our neighbors and communities rely on for their livelihood. We think of it as the coiled spring. I'm going to use a phrase that I first heard from Roger Dow, head of US Travel, but the idea that people's need to travel as a part of self-expression and self-fulfillment has been suppressed, and now it's exploding. Initially, traveling beyond the state borders was very difficult. And, you know, there were all kinds of testing requirements to get out of the state and to get into another state and then return to the state. And as we discussed, you know, we took advantage of that opportunity to urge New Yorkers to explore their backyard. We talked about a lot of other really exciting silver lining issues to that.
Well, yeah, we'll touch on that in a second. I want to kind of focus on this Roam the Empire campaign. When we first talked about this, I wasn't even aware of everything that, you know, New York State had to offer. Tell us a little bit more about the campaign. Some of the things that you were sharing, from national parks to wineries. I mean, I don't want to, you know, say everything. I'll let you kind of touch on it, and then, you know, any kind of results that you're seeing from it.
Well, you know, New York State has its biggest park is the Adirondack State Park, and it's 6 million acres. And, you know, when we put that fact out, we also said you could put Yellowstone and Yosemite, and we listed a handful of national parks that are just world renowned. They all fit inside the Adirondack Park. And in addition to that, we've got the Catskill Park, which is between 2 and 3 million acres in New York State. People think of New York State, they think of New York City, and they don't recognize that New York City only accounts for about 4% of our land area. And the other 96% has a lot to offer as well. We have nearly 400 wineries, and the Finger Lakes region in particular is rated one of the top 5 international wine destinations to visit. We have the 750-mile contiguous Empire State Trail that enables people to motorboat, paddle, canoe, kayak, pedal, or hike from Albany to from New York City to Montreal, from, you know, literally the southernmost point of our state to Canada, or from that matter, from Albany across the state, east to west, into the Great Lakes. We also have 60 ski areas. We have more ski areas in upstate New York than exist in any other state in the United States. But these are all assets that many people in New York City and Long Island weren't aware of. It's, you know, I hate to single them out, but they're the single largest population center. And with their inability to travel to California or Italy or France or Spain to visit a wine region, they suddenly discovered the wines of Long Island, the Hudson Valley, the Finger Lakes in Western New York. They discovered, because they couldn't ski in Vermont or fly across to the Rockies, all of these ski areas that were in their backyard. And as I like to say, they've used our, you know, tremendous interstate highway system to drive by so many things. This pandemic, if you want to say there was a silver lining, it got them off the highways and into the byways and the roads less traveled, and they discovered all the things they were driving past that were much closer to home.
All those hidden gems.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, so with that campaign, you had kind of touched on some media channels and utilizing social and stuff. Like, tell us you know, how do you think about a media mix, and how important is video and streaming TV? You mentioned that you guys are utilizing that a lot.
I'm gonna quote a statistic from Destination Analysts. Destination Analysts is a highly regarded market research firm focused on the travel industry. They're based in California, but we do a lot of work with them, and they indicate that over the past 5 years, the preference and utilization of online and streaming video has climbed 32%. Now, that's a big number, but it's even bigger when you stop and take a look at all the other media platforms and realize they declined during that period. It's not only the fastest growing, it's the only one that showed an increase in reference in terms of people's preference. And it's where I would say that the genesis or conception of a travel plan begins. People are inspired by what they see in the video, and then they'll go to the travel websites, and they'll go to the review websites, and they'll go to the destination websites and booking engines. They might explore, in print media, articles that they might have otherwise passed over. But what's really increasingly true is that it's the online and streaming video, the television platforms that are, the key to motivating a travel inspiration.
And that's one of those silver linings in the media space. The pandemic really just accelerated the adoption of video. So I think we've seen that. So that's I guess one other silver lining. Any other silver linings that we know that international travel is still largely shut out. Any other silver linings with having workers to explore more, or any other attraction that you want to share? Did I freeze up?
You were breaking up at my end. I don't know whether that was
Sorry,
me or
Bob,
you,
cut
Peter.
out?
Can you hear me?
Sorry, Bob. I can hear you now. Where did I cut out?
Well, I heard it, but I heard it in bits and pieces that, the pandemic gave people an opportunity or a motivation to explore video online in ways they never had. It also inspired them to discover how they could work or attend school remotely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that had a fantastic effect on things. In our state, what it's motivating is a move to be sure that high speed, high bandwidth internet is available everywhere, not just in the densely populated urban areas. And during the pandemic, one of the anecdotes I gave you was folks in upstate New York who were, as we reopened the state in June of 2020, unsure, do I reopen my lodge or my bed and breakfast or my cabins, much less my hotel? Are people going to come? And am I going to be able to operate safely? Can I meet all the different guidelines? And we were very, very assiduous about meeting the healthcare guidelines and, reopening safely to responsible travelers. But the big key is I from the people who called me with uncertainty, who I encouraged to open, I was getting calls. One place had a 12-room lodge, and they booked the entire lodge for the entire summer on the first phone call.
Wow.
Other people experienced the best years in their history as a business, as people in urban areas said, let's just, call, have they got good internet? If they've got good internet, then we're going to relocate for months, not weeks. We're going to relocate the family. We're going to relocate the extended family, and we'll work remotely. And if the children or young people are involved in academic pursuits, they can study remotely. And it really was transformational. And again, another silver lining during the pandemic.
And we're still in this Zoom environment, and so why not take advantage of it, especially when you have everything that you've been talking about that New York has to offer. Any other investments in like revitalizing some of those New York destinations or examples that you want to share as far as either New York State or NYC attractions?
Well, first of all, I'm going to hark back to the fact that our leadership at the state level as well as local level is visionary. I embrace a concept that I will call transformational tourism or tourism stewardship. That when you're the destination marketer in charge of a region or an organization, that it's your job. This is entrusted to you for a period of time that you're in service. When you're done and you hand that mantle over to the next individual or organization, you should hand something off that's better than what you were given. You've improved it. And it's my primary concern as it relates to sustainable tourism. I wholeheartedly support the environmental and quality of life issues that are expressed in sustainable tourism, but I have concerns if people embrace that without exception, that it also limits you to existing capacities, resources. Sustainable tourism, every definition I found, doesn't take into account a vision for a better future, just one that does no harm. And doing no harm isn't good enough. How can we do good? How can we improve a destination? And that's where I would look like, establishing a national marine sanctuary. It's going to be an enormous economic benefit to that region. But at the same time, it's environmentally sensitive. It's preserving the environment. It does great things. The National Comedy Center that opened in Chautauqua took a decade to develop the concept and everything, but they took an abandoned, essentially unused downtown, railroad terminal and converted it into a world-class attraction. Similarly, the Empire State Trail simply connected all the pieces of the former Champlain and Erie Canal system that had, basically fragmented over the years, and has created now the largest contiguous hiker, biker, peddler, paddler, trail in the 48 states. New York has the greatest outdoor trail system now in the country. And that's just the Empire State Trail, not all the other trails that exist in the Adirondack and Catskill parks. So there's a lot of very good things going on. New York City, as you know, has gotten the extreme focus, and rightly so, where the rest of the state suffered some declines and contributed to that 54% loss. New York City suffered declines of like 80%. Wow. And because they did not have that international traveler, they didn't have the interstate traveler. Their museums were at very limited capacity. Their Broadway is just, at this point beginning to reopen. There was a lot of need for them to reestablish that they are a safe destination, ready for responsible travelers and good to go. And they also have the broadest market to reach out to internationally and globally. When people start coming back to New York City, we will see that traffic restored also to upstate, which is getting more and more international visitors each year.
That's incredible. And I love your idea. It was transformational and sustainable tourism.
Yes.
I think that's obviously incredible that, all states and countries should look at investing in. Bob, great conversation. So, hey, last question. So what about you? What are your travel plans this summer? I know you mentioned your hands are a little busy. You got a new grandbaby?
We, along with many other things, the pandemic coincided with the birth of my first two grandchildren. And so one of them is in the house today. In 2 weeks, my other daughter and her husband and my granddaughter will be visiting. But having said that, as I indicated 2 weeks ago, I was literally 500 miles away in Chautauqua, New York, visiting the National Comedy Center. That's where we will hold our first in-person event since the pandemic began. We will be in Jamestown, the home of Lucille Ball. Our members will be gathering in October of this year. So I not only toured, and this comes back to those concepts, the Comedy Center, which we're going to spend an evening there. You might want to come up, Peter. No holds barred, as it were, on Thursday night, October 21st. But I also explored the Peterson Institute, dedicated to environmental issues, particularly motivated by the career of Roger Tory Peterson. I also visited the Jackson Center for Human and Civil Rights. Jackson was a Supreme Court Justice, Adjutant General, and Attorney General of the United States, who also came from Jamestown. And both of these organizations hold international convocations each year to have dialogues about that. Jamestown is also home to the Chautauqua Institute, which has been a center of dialogue since the 1800s. Before there were TED Talks, there was Jamestown, before we had this opportunity. But I also will be up in Oswego to meet with the folks relative to the National Marine Sanctuary. I'm planning to be in Lake Placid at the Olympic Village to deliver some awards that they won during our recent Tourism Excellence Awards. And I also plan to be exploring parts of the Hudson Valley and get myself down to Cooperstown, where they're going to be welcoming some people into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of traveling.
Just a couple of travel plans.
Yes, not to mention New York City. I'm long overdue for a New York City fix. So, but I sit here 15 to 20 minutes outside New York State's capital on a small 25-acre farm. And, New York gives you the opportunity to enjoy many different lifestyles in the same day.
That's incredible. And, congratulations on the grandbabies. That's really exciting. It's, I think you'll probably see a lot of grandbabies that are coming out from the pandemic.
Well, these arrived during, so I can't. I do have a third grandchild that I'm not supposed to talk about, actually, but will be arriving in about 6 months' time. We can maybe blame that one on the pandemic.
All right. Well, congratulations. Well, I'm not seeing any questions that came through, so definitely appreciate your time, and thanks, Brand Innovators, for hosting us. So I think we're going to turn it back over to them.
Okay. Maybe we're a little early.
We could be, but I'll go ahead and hang up, Bob. But great talking with you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
If anybody is interested in any of the concepts talked about today or initiatives, happy to field your inquiries. My email is bob@nystia.org. Thank you. So long, Diana. A little early.
Hello. Thank you both.
Bob, but great talking with you.
Take care. Thank you. Everybody.
Great session. I really enjoyed it. I am actually usually based in Europe, but here in my house.
If anybody is interested in any of the concepts talked about today or initiatives, happy to field your inquiries. My email is bob@nystia.org. Thank you. So long, Diana.
Hello. Thank you both so much.
Hello. Thank you both.
Take care. Thank you.
Great session. I really enjoyed it. I am actually usually based in Europe, but here in my house.
If anybody is interested in any of the concepts talked about today or initiatives, happy to field your inquiries. My email is bob@nystia.org. Thank you. Hello, Diana.
Hello. Thank you both so much.
Hello. Thank you both.
Take care. Thank you.
Great session. I really enjoyed it. I am actually usually based in Europe, but here in my house. Hi. So sorry, having some technical difficulties here for a second. Thank you so much for that session. That was fantastic. I am, as I say, usually based in Switzerland, but now here in the Delaware River Valley in upstate New York. So there is this connection bringing international people to different destinations. And now we've heard from different locations and places where you can go and visit now that travel is reopened. But next we're going to talk about like booking travel. That's obviously a huge part of the customer journey. And I would like to introduce Brent Rivard, who's the CMO of Internova Travel Group, as well as Chris Pizarro, the SVP of Global Sales and Marketing at Canoe, who are going to be talking about this, the online booking experience. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Said I'm Chris Pizarro, SVP of Global Sales and Marketing at Canoe Ventures. We are an ad technology company out of the beautiful Denver, Colorado. I'm honored to be able to chat today with Brent Rivard, CMO for Internova. Welcome, Brent, and let's just jump right into it.
Sure, thanks.
Since this is Brand Innovators, the community, right? I always like to spend a few minutes talking about your career, right? People are here to hear you. And your path to becoming a CMO of Internova Travel Group. Nice gig.
Yeah.
How'd you get here?
Yeah. How did I get here? Yeah. Sometimes I ask myself the very question.
Right.
Yeah. How did this happen?
How did this happen? Right.
Yeah. My background's always been in ad agencies. I mean, I grew up in love with advertising and marketing. I found it just a fascinating world, and I got into it, right out of school, and happened across a great job at an agency that was, fantastic at the time, called Saatchi & Saatchi. And I rode that wave through and worked my way through various ad agencies. And, while I worked very, very hard at it, sometimes you get very fortunate in life, and I consider myself fortunate to have worked for some of the best agencies and some of the best people around. And hey, I had one of the best jobs in the world. I traveled around the world and ran Budweiser's business globally for an agency called Anomaly out of New York, which is, one of the top dogs. And I thought, I'll never get a better job than this, going around promoting beer. But if I'm honest, I kind of fell out of love with the business, and the business became a little bit mundane. It started to be infiltrated from more of a, I spent more time negotiating with procurement than I did thinking strategically about how I was going to advance my clients' businesses.
Sure.
And that's when I started thinking about what's next for me, and various channels I went through. I think we're all aware that when we stop learning, we get stagnant as A-types. So I started venturing in, and you know what, I took some time, and I left the position that I was with at the time. I had gone back to, I'm Canadian, I went back to Toronto. I was a president of an ad agency there. And then I just took some time and walked away from it. It wasn't working out for me, and thought about what's next. And the travel world, I just was looking for, where do I think there is monster opportunity to innovate, to drive insights, to do things different. And to make some things happen. That's what makes us tick, right? Is, how can we win? What's a juicy business problem that we can chew on? What scares us? I love that. Let's get excited about what's next and what we can do. And that led me to, speaking with JD O'Hara, the CEO of Internova, and creating a relationship. And the long story short is that we kind of did, which was fantastic. It's like, let's not interview with 4 people and then decide that you're the CMO. Let's chew on some business problems and do, I don't know what it ended up. Maybe it was a 4 to 6 month interview of doing some consulting with them, and getting into that building and meeting some just unbelievable people that had an appetite for what I was looking for. Because what I didn't want to do again was make that mistake, to get into this building and get all excited and then find there's no appetite in this building for change. There's no appetite for innovation. It might have just been the CEO, but it wasn't. And so I got very excited. And then, long story short, serendipitous, here I am, CMO of Internova Travel Group.
Well, and you're right. It's sometimes you have to look for the culture within an organization, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes it is the PR folks saying something or the CEO saying something, and you get in and you really realize, yeah, the culture isn't ready no matter what that guy says or what the other guy says.
Right.
Before I do want to pick up obviously on this and find out what your day to day and what that scary is like. But you said something a little earlier, Brent. I just want to go back to it, and
Yeah.
that was you just kind of said, "Hey, when I was young, you know, I kind of rode, you know, kind of rose up, you know, through this, and this." Can you just touch on a minute what that is? Like, I feel like there's a lot of young folks. I refer to them as the kids because I'm an old man.
Yeah,
These are 35-year-old people with 3 kids of their own, but I still refer to them as the kids. All of
Yeah.
you, sorry. You know, I don't know, just advice for them and that sort of thing. You know, I think folks like us take it for granted. Oh, we just rose the ladder. You know, what's that? How does that happen?
You know what? I think young people are in a better position today than we were, because they're more courageous than we were. And I know I'm dating myself, but you know, I don't complain about young people in business right now. I know a lot of people do. Maybe I'm lying. Maybe I do every once in a while.
I know a lot of them are damn smarter than I am.
Yeah, but I think what they've done is they're not accepting the status quo, and I didn't early in my career either. I was, you know, I'm obviously an A-type. I'm outspoken, and I was courageous and hungry. And I know those sound like just basic things, but they're hard to train. You either have it or you don't. I mean, a lot of people, you know, you're either supposed to be in these types of industries or you're not. And can you learn? Can you fake it a little bit? Yeah, maybe. But I think the people that really accelerate their careers are recognized from great leaders and promoted accordingly, because you know, in this world that I'm in now, and then my previous life in advertising, it was about thinking. Are you a strategic thinker naturally? You can teach somebody to be a great thinker, but if you have it naturally, and then you multiply that with the courage to speak up, even as a junior in a room full of, you know, very senior people, if you're smart, you're going to go places. And, you know, I was fortunate that way, but I think young people, my advice for young, they're better seated than we are. I mean, I'm shocked at, like, they have a lot of courage. You know, I sit in rooms and I'm like, wow, I never said that to my boss. You know, I remember, I mean, we grew up in the era of you get there before your boss and you leave after them.
Right. No doubt. All right. Very helpful. Thank you. So yeah, let's pick up on your scary day to day now. What's your day like walking into your new building?
It was fantastic walking into the new building, which, you know, we were speaking of, that it was the first time I just got on a plane for the first time at the beginning of the week, which was fantastic. So now we're returning to some sense of normalcy. I don't, you know, apologies, we have to do it this way now, but I'm not a fan of Zoom. I'm a people person, whiteboards everywhere. Paint my office in a whiteboard and let's get down to work and thinking. But right now it's still, we're drinking from a fire hose, right? We're in that strategic planning phase and really understanding what's happening. And, you know, it's changing at a pace that none of us could have imagined. I mean, we had a great session yesterday. Now I'm in Alexandria. I was in New York a few days ago, but at our office in Alexandria, and we were talking about how we were looking back and saying, we thought this was, you know, we all did. It's go home for 2 weeks and then this is going to change. So, you know, going through that in the past and learning from it and saying, let's assume nothing. Let's push ourselves now. Our session yesterday was, what does the future look like? Because let's not assume that, you know, even the news this morning, I was watching the Today Show and we're like, you know, here in the United States, our cases are going up again, and these variants are rampant. And then, you know, the anti-vaxxers are dominant. That's going to potentially change next week, or they might start declining again, and it won't, and we'll all be thinking more about travel. But I think pushing ourselves to do that, aligning our functions accordingly, and then really trying to, you know, my entire world has been insight-based. So if the Delta variant does dominate, how is that going to affect the insights into travel? Into Europe is going to be different than into South America is going to be different than Mexico, right? So I think that now the day-to-day it's tiring because it's assume nothing. And what you assume today and what you hypothesize and plan for today, you need to be prepared to throw it out and to fail fast. And that's okay. because the world's changed. It's not going to go back to exactly the way it was. I certainly hope it does. And I'm sure at some point we'll be looking back at it and saying, oh, remember that pandemic and how things were affected. But I think now the day-to-day really is about, you know, it's almost like, you know, it's segment planning. It's if this happens, this happens. If this happens, though, this happens. And then how do you do that efficiently and effectively so that you're not, you know, constantly just throwing money away? I mean, hey, we're in a business that, of course, we're in travel. There's nobody's celebrating the EBITDA numbers that we're delivering right now.
Yeah. There's I've heard that from other agencies, from other clients. Is, you know, the word last year was certainly flexibility was the you know, the big thing. And like you said, as far as strategic planning, all the way down to your media plan and is it cancelable and, you know, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's had to fall in line.
Yeah, and it seems like that is a trend that is going to continue for some time.
Yeah, for sure. There's no question. It's going to continue, and we're going to continue to, you know, drive ourselves crazy. But that's why we do this job. That's why we're in marketing, and that's why we love what we do, because it's never the same, right? It's not repeatable.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so a month ago, you guys launched your first consumer-facing ad campaign, Go Human. I actually went on iSpot last night, reviewed the creative.
Oh, great.
I think it's outstanding that it really hits on the heart of your value proposition.
Absolutely.
You know, talk to us about it. What provoked it at this move? How'd you go about doing all this? You know, it's a great piece of work, and I'm fascinated to find out more about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, you know, looking back again and saying, how did you end up here, you know, as a CMO, let alone how did you end up with this campaign and what made it happen? So, I mean, I kind of looked at it, and these were the early discussions with JD was, you know, traditionally the industry across the board has done a very good job of, you know, talking to existing customers and stimulating travel, and, you know, the technology that we have that allows us to say, you know, if you did this, you'll probably like this. It's almost like Amazon-ish. But what it hasn't done is it never really did much to, you know, work the top of the funnel. And I even went so far as to say, and if you know, exaggerate the truth or exaggerate the point to make the point that, you know, once upon a time, maybe the industry of the advisors could have slowed down or even stopped the OTAs. But what I found very peculiar from an advertising background was the entire industry kind of sat on its hands and let them come in and let them spend hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars. I mean, I think it was last week that I read that Expedia's marketing budget this year is coming out of a pandemic, I think is $5 billion. So I found it fascinating that, wow, we all scenario plan, and, you know, coming out of the beer business, and, you know, we have to tackle there was a time when it was all the craft breweries and what have you. And, you know, but, you know, a company like InBev wasn't going to let everybody just walk all over them. But here was an industry that I found fascinating. And that's what I got excited about. And I was like, wow, you just kind of let these guys walk in, spend money like it was water at the top of the funnel, go from I'd never heard of you to Expedia is, you know, this dominant company, and not a lot about it. So what happened when the pandemic hit is having an attentive audience with we all know in the fragmented media that we deal with today, we all know that to have an attentive audience is very, very challenging. Of course. We as advertisers always assume that people want to hear what we're saying, and they even want to consume it in the order that we serve up the ads when we present them to a client. That couldn't be further from reality. But what led to the conversation with JD was I certainly hope we'll never have a more attentive audience than we do today. We saw these horror stories come out. I mean, I think it was only a month and a half ago that, Mr. Trudeau in Canada bailed out Air Canada and said, you have to give people refunds. Well, guys, you should have done that a year ago. You know, so here we are in this pandemic. We're reading these horror stories. We got people on hold for days. And all of a sudden, oh, there's a little crack. And my world is where there's a crack, there's an opportunity. And, you know, I hate to quote Churchill and say, let's not let a great crisis go to waste. But I think that people had to stop and really recalibrate and figure out what is the opportunity that's presenting it here. And it revealed the weakness of the OTAs and the algorithms and the bots. And what we ended up putting on the wall was algorithms, bots, and OTAs are built to do one thing and one thing really well: sell. But that's it. That's where it ends. So just maybe we have an opportunity to start pushing human beings again, and that led to the campaign of Go Human, Book Human. And it's been, it's been a tremendous journey. It's been a lot of fun. I think we have our advisor base very enthusiastically embracing, like, wow, this is a whole level of support that this organization is pushing our wares and our benefits forward. And I think it has a lot of legs. That makes me most excited about this campaign, if I'm honest. I've been, fortunate enough, as I've mentioned, to work on some great campaigns, but it's either us, we fall out of love with our own work faster than consumers do, or clients will, and then you're on. But if you read some of the headlines, the lead line of the campaign is, if machines can't dream, how can they book your dream vacation? And we got so excited that I even went so far as to say, I'm not a writer. And everybody in the room at the time was not a writer. And I said, I bet everyone in this room can write 5 of these headlines that could make it into the airwaves very easily, because it's just, there's such real insights in that. 0% of bots can talk to the manager. They can't talk, right? And then you can see how it lends itself to corporate travel, to the various areas of travel, to families, the insights into families, and an algorithm doesn't particularly know how important it is to make the last flight out, right? So there's richness there. So we're really excited about it. Really excited about where this can go.
So where does this? What's the media plan look like for a message like this? Like in your beer days, I'm sure in one part you're trying to speak to the distributors and also speak to the consumers. So here you just sort of mentioned, well, it's my my agents, but also the consumer. So how's this message getting out?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're playing around a lot, because this is as well that I have to be sensitive, that I can't be silly and say, hey, you know what? Mr. O'Hara, Expedia spends $5 billion. Can I have $5 billion? We have to be responsible and have to be smart. And so what we're doing is we're spending a lot of time, I call it test, learn, adapt, and listen and learn, right? Because I'm spending a lot of time learning, let me tell you. So what we're doing is obviously social media is a huge component of it. And then YouTube, the long form video of the Android spot, the film that we shot, is we're learning a lot from. Would I love to see this as a Super Bowl commercial? Absolutely. Might that be in the future? I don't know. But what we're doing is we're learning what's working, what is getting attention, we were so excited. I mean, I said to JD that, everybody used to wait, all the PR, outlets used to wait and see what's Budweiser going to do for Super Bowl. And, we might get coverage of 30, 35 outlets. And I think we're up to 100. I might be mistaken by now. It may be more. I think we're at 170 outlets picked up this story. And what was more fascinating, it was everything from the travel periodicals all the way to Fast Company. So I'm like, okay, so we've struck a chord.
Yeah,
good.
Right. Something.
And I'm always reminding myself, because we get don't assume you know anything, right? But let the consumers and let the industry tell you whether what you've done is successful or not before you start patting yourself on the back. So what we've done is responsibly gone in with some good investment in multiple channels, and as many that we think that we should be spending money on right now, and then let that tell us where we go next. And the media agency, as we speak, is planning for what might be next.
And then you just might have answered my next thing. All right, great. You're putting it out there. You're getting this data back. How does data inform, because everyone talks about big data and all this data, and it's an algorithm data, but how do you translate these data points into actionable human things that you can react to? Like, do you have a mechanism, formal mechanism to doing that, or you just kind of take it in and see what the numbers are telling you?
Data is a funny thing, right? I mean, there's no shortage of data, but there's certainly a shortage of what the hell do we do with it, and how do we package it, and what do we do? I mean, I read it, I can't remember where the article was, but I think it was like 5 years ago. It was like everything you just said it, big data, small data, every single article, everything that you were reading was about data. But data for the sake of data doesn't work either. It needs to be really purpose driven. So I love it for the fact of test, learn, adapt. And that's where I like social media a lot. Because you can get, for a minimal investment, an immediate read on what's really going on. You can have, remember the world of A/B testing. Well, now it's ABCDEFG testing. I mean, you can test anything at the speed of light. You can get immediate return and figure out what's working. And what I like about it as well that the industry's moved to is that we think this is going to be incredibly successful, and there's no way that could be successful. And that's where I say we have to check our egos and our resumes to say, no, we don't know, right? Like, I shared a story that got some good laughs. I think it was a few months ago, where I said, if I imagined walking into NBC and pitching Dancing with the Stars, I would have expected to have been kicked out of the room and security told to never let me back in the building. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Here we are. It's a #1 show that's been running for 100 years now. Yeah. So that's just further evidence that we don't know anything. So let's use data to inform where we go and how we go there, and be careful in the process, because I like it for its insights. I don't like it for testing creative. I mean, there's a whole culture out there that is, from 100 years ago that's like, let's test our TV spots and, set up a panel of focus groups of 3 groups of 8 and let it tell us whether the spot's going to work or not. Well, no, that's a bad use of data. But I do like it for insights. I mean, the best strategic planners that I've ever worked with effectively use data and get to a conclusion. But, and to that end, nothing, it's just like go human. Funny enough, the best strategic thinkers are still going to take the data and come to a conclusion that's relevant. The data is not going to give you the answer. Oftentimes it asks more questions, is what I've said. So you have to be careful with it. And I don't know if that perfectly answers your question, but that shows again how amazing data can be, but how dangerous it can be as well.
Yeah, and no, I think you've answered it exactly. And you're right, it does sort of reflect back to go human. I'm seeing a trend. I'm seeing a trend here, Brandon. You're thinking, but it does, and and that's why I do think there's you need that analysis. People who just think data for data's sake, and the algorithm's going to pump out an answer. The answer still needs to inform some strategic thinking and decision making. So So switching gears a little bit and back to the team building. Sure. Listen, you've been doing this a long time, and you've built, like you said, I mean, you've built tremendous teams. How do you build, nurture, mentor a culture that does think strategically, does think, and kind of the flip side of it, Brent, is, and I'm going to throw you a loop here, but what if you got someone on your team who doesn't think that way? Right. Just how do you build teams that you've done it so successfully?
Yeah, it's interesting that again, I've been really fortunate to work for some great leaders that taught me a lot of great things, and equally, I've worked for some horrible right. dictator leaders that have taught me arguably more than the good ones did. But
it's amazing you remember those ones. Pretty much. Yeah. I have a few of those. Yes.
You know what? I think a lot of it has to do with check your ego and understand what you are as a leader. A leader that does or usurps or, is always taking we all know that that's bad. So then what are we? I mean, we're facilitators, really, creating conditions that are exciting, that allow people to innovate and to allow people to fail, make it safe. I have said more since I took this position on that, hey, I'm all for learning from failing. And the only way to innovate is to fail. Like I said, if the person just accepted that there's no way that NBC is going to ever buy a show that's a bunch of B and C list celebrities that are dancing, well, you know, I wouldn't have gone and pitched it, but somebody was like,
someone did.
I think maybe I'm onto something. And somebody did. So whoever the group, that obviously was a group, I'm sure it wasn't one person, but the conditions were created to facilitate making mistakes, innovating, and getting down to, you know, I keep saying, let's have some fun. We're in the travel business. I mean, I learned this well from the advertising business. It is famous for having a good time, you know, and we've all watched Mad Men, and there's certainly a lot of reality there. But celebrate reward successes, but celebrate and reward failures, because you took a crack at something that probably nobody else did. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then to your question about when somebody on your team isn't there, I find that when you have a high-powered, achieving team and somebody's on it that isn't there, they usually deselect themselves. And they realize it. And if they're not going to deselect themselves, as a leader, you don't discourage that person and terminate them. You again create the conditions for their talents to be moved elsewhere. Yep. And you be responsible, and that is great leadership. What leadership isn't is you're not up to par with this high achieving team, so I got to let you go, right?
It's just a matter of where.
Types. I mean, can you imagine, you know, me hiring like 5 of me? Like, I would drive myself crazy, right? So I think that we have to take that into consideration and hire well-rounded people, create those conditions, and then let them deselect themselves or help them along to their next opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's been a few people I've, you know, adopted on teams over the years, and you're like, oh, geez, how the hell did I get this guy? And then you're right. It's upon you as a leader they obviously have a strength. They're a human being. They have a strength, and you just need to find out where that is and have them succeed. Great. Mm-hmm. Cool. So along with like building teams within your organization too, which you've built a lot of, you know, you've also been around the world, hence our, you know, earlier comments about travel and all. How do you approach something in the U.S. as opposed to Canada, or differently than the U.K. or, you know, so when you're doing this campaign, are you thinking, and how is it hitting internationally, or, you know, how do you handle the global aspect of everything that, you know, every major company needs to do now can only be thought about in their region. It needs to be multi-region. So how do you think through that?
I think again, it's that humbleness. It's assume you know nothing. Right. I want to ask Target how their launch into Canada went. Right. They're like, well, of course. I mean, they look the same. They sound relatively the same. Yeah. So we're just going to walk in here with our ego and drop Target on Canada, and we're going to kill it. We're going to dominate. Yeah. I haven't seen anybody get it wrong faster and lose shareholders' money in the process. And that was evidence of ego. I think that you need to listen, and you need to pay attention and learn. The insights into Canadians, I mean, you know what? I might have been guilty of it. When I moved to the United States years ago from Toronto and I landed in New York, you know, I found out quickly how Canadian I was. Right? and that's not a positive or a negative. It's a reality. And my wife and I spoke of it at length. That, oh, wow, what we have been preaching that we're different. And even in Canada, I mean, the province of Quebec, which is a French-speaking province for those that might not be familiar, the insights into Quebec were completely different. The only top 10 TV show in Quebec that wasn't French-speaking was The Simpsons. Wow. It's fascinating. Wow. So when you're creating advertising, in that case, in my previous life, they probably should have a French-speaking celebrity if you're going to use a celebrity, and not a Canadian one or not an American one, because it's going to fail. So I think the simplest answer is listen and learn. I mean, if there's something that, you know, hey, you know, back early in my career, I did go through a period like everybody probably did where I thought I knew much more than I did. And I think that, you know, I had some great leadership that taught me that assume nothing, learn. There's where data comes into play as well. Land somewhere and ask yourself what's up. And I did in my previous lives as well have the benefit of global travel and everywhere from, you know, Ho Chi Minh to Nigeria, you know, to South America. And when you landed, you learned the culture in a hurry. And, you know, again, to have had those benefits of learning, like, wow, we don't know a damn thing. So it's all insight based. Learn how the insights differ, right? Americans and Canadians are different than Brits and Nigerians. So learn from it.
Yeah, I mean, I know when we, as Canoe, we went into Latin America a couple of years ago, and I just said, you know, I at least need to learn a few Spanish words, if not only just to prove I'm, you know, not some arrogant American who think I know everything. And it goes a long way. Just, you know, just a bit of effort to just put that out there actually goes a long way.
Oh my God. I remember, I was in Canada actually, and I had a Chinese Uber driver with a bunch of friends. And when I got out of the Uber, I said, "Xie." And he looked at me like, "What the hell did you just say?" And my friends are like, "What did you say?" I said, "I just said thank you in Chinese." I said, "I learned that from, you know, my clients when I used to go to Shanghai and Guangzhou."
Right. Just those little bit can go a long way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, covered a lot of ground here. So taking this out, you know, you got the new gig, finding out, you know, where this goes. Not any predictions to hold you to, Brent, but what do you see the next 3 years like as far as your company? I mean, what are the goals? What are your sort of personal goals within the organization? I mean, you must have come in, and within those 4 months of you know, talking to everyone before coming in, must have had something on paper that says, you know, it's probably going to look like X.
I'm trying to figure out what the next 3 days is going to look like.
All right. What does day 4 look like? How's that?
Exactly. I mean, again, it's the spirit of always learning, always innovating. What does it look like? I mean, our challenge is to constantly be building real tangible value from a marketing standpoint and what we're doing internally, and constantly reminding ourselves our customers are our advisors, right? And our job is to set them up for success, to sell their consumers real, tangible, valuable experiences. And what we're selling today is certainly different than what we sold 16 months ago. The insights are completely different.
Yeah.
Everything from, we're hearing this term revenge travel, and the insight into don't let another year go by to take that trip that's on your bucket list, all the way to safety and where we're going with a family of 6 that's going to travel somewhere in safety. So being insight based and being current is really my wholehearted focus right now. What that looks like next week, Thursday, like we said, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh, we're doing this again. It's a different insight, right? So what our advisors are facing today is different than when they faced literally yesterday. Yesterday, people were like, everything's flat or declining. And today we hear on the news it's going up. And the media has become a little bit of a little bit of an enemy, if I'm honest. The glorification of the negative is dominating, but I can't control that. But what I have to do is be ready for it. What's it look 3 years from now? I mean, hey, we want to build this company. We want to be, you know, and we want advisors to go. There's absolutely no question. This is the organization that has our backs, that understands the insights into our consumers, which is the end consumer, is building real tangible value for us, is connecting with our suppliers and our partners to innovate and bring something different, right? If anybody in the industry can package air and a location and a hotel and maybe get you free breakfast, and that's fine. But you know what's going to really unlock the value of tomorrow? And if I had the answer today, I'd probably be retired. So I'll have to continue to work for it.
Well, it seems like you have, like you mentioned, as far as media, you can get that instant A, B, C, D, E testing back, social media, all that. It seems like you do have this vast resource from your advisors, right? From the people you're serving. Do you have a formal mechanism as to how you get their insights and their clients, consumers insights, or is it more ad hoc? How do you
No,
take
I
that?
mean, we have people communicating with our advisor base all the time, all the time. I mean, we have like, I can't even imagine the amount of phone calls that are through a day and learning and then passing that information on, you know, and some of it's incredibly productive and some of it isn't, but you have to be able to, again, that's your data, right? And your data, again, is only as good as a human being deciphering it. So those individuals are passing real insights and real tangible opportunities, problems onto us constantly. And again, if we check our egos, we can listen and learn accordingly.
Well, yeah, certainly. Well, like any anytime I go to online reviews, right? Throw out the highs, throw out the lows.
Right.
Everyone's going to have their agenda, and hold to the middle. All right. Well, I believe if anyone had any Q&As that you can click on the Q&A. I'm not quite sure how that's working, but if you can, please go ahead and do that. We're starting to wind down on our time. But one more question from me, Brent, and it really is on the same theme. And I think we've pretty much nailed the point of view here. But any last piece of advice for, something that you were told that works or something you figured out on your own? I mean, we certainly covered, the strategic thinking and all of that. But anything else you would tell, the younger version of yourself?
I'll give credit to Carl Johnson from Anomaly. He used to walk through all the time, and it was painted on a few walls throughout the organization. It said, "Ask better questions." And I've added on to that when I communicate that to people, and I say, not only ask better questions, ask more questions and question everything. And that's learned from a strategic planning background that I've been fortunate enough to be part of. And the best planners that I've worked with question everything. What worked today isn't necessarily going to work tomorrow. It might, but it might not. So just question it, and just work hard to push yourself in that capacity. And I think that always delivers value. The package that you came up with today won't. The comp that you came up with today won't. The upfronts that you negotiated last year, question them, right? And then keep pushing yourself to innovate.
Well, especially when you said on the agency side, getting a little bored with that when it was, hey, what's my plan? What's my media plan from last year? All right, let's tack on 5% and go out to lunch.
Yeah, we used to say to the media companies that, did you just copy and paste last year's and change the name and the date on it?
Yep, seen that happen.
Yeah.
That's great. I did see one question come in, and I think we've pretty much answered it in terms of, what are some of the permanent changes to the industry that are directly related to the pandemic? And I think your answer is, remain flexible.
Yeah, and it's just made everybody stop and assess, right? Just full stop. The world has changed. The marketing conditions have changed. The solutions have changed, and just stop and learn. And I'm excited for us because I feel confident that this is the organization that's going to lead this industry, and we're going to watch a lot of people do what they did last year.
Yep. Fantastic. All right. Well, Brett, pleasure, sir, sitting chatting with you. I hope that was informative and if not entertaining for everyone out there. Thanks for having us. And Diana, back to you.
Yes,
thank you guys.
Thank you both for being here. I really loved what you were talking about in terms of, taking risks and not being afraid to fail, to really take to make great creative, because obviously, if you're just too careful, we're not going to get there. And I love your analogy with the Dancing with the Stars, this kind of concept, because it's true. It's like, okay, well, what's not there? How can we imagine it? And how can we get it there? And I think that's going to go into a lot of the innovation and planning for where travel goes in the future and how brands are communicating with consumers. So thank you both for your session. I am now going to pass it along.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Okay, so for our last session today, we have Jeanette Leando, who's the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications at MasterCard Europe, and CEO of Ogilvy UK, Fiona Gordon. Obviously, being able to spend money and purchase goods is a huge part of the travel business, and would love to hear what's going on at MasterCard and the loyalty programs and whatnot, which are huge when it comes to travel. And let's welcome them to our virtual stage. I saw Fiona there.
Hey,
Hi, Fiona. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you. Just waiting a second on Jeanette. I think we've got.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be here in a second.
Yeah, exactly. And Fiona, where are you based?
I'm based in London.
Okay, wonderful.
So yeah. So we're starting to almost go back into heat wave, I think, in London, which is a rare event, but particularly good at the moment when we can't travel to many places. So it's nice if we have good weather in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And have you been getting some of the rain that's been coming through?
Yeah, we had crazy rain on Monday. So we had terrible floods actually in London on Monday, but not as bad, I think, as Central Europe have just had. So, but yes, pretty bad floods on Monday.
Yes. I am currently in New York, but was and usually based in Switzerland. And we've just had crazy rain and flooding in this past few days. So
I know it's been a bit strange weather, hasn't it, recently?
yes, exactly. I think we have. Yep. Nope.
Hopefully, I think she might be a couple of minutes because it's hopefully she should be here in a second.
Yeah, definitely. And so can you tell us a little bit about Ogilvy and the travel work that you guys are doing with some of your clients?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I think at the moment, as we go through the pandemic, obviously we work for IAG, so we work for British Airways. So I think one of the big things has been really about trying to get people ready to fly again, but also helping people, different segments, feel reassured. So, as people take their first flight, how do you actually, for different age groups, help them feel reassured, so that you kind of have a different service for kind of what people need. And obviously really flexible booking, because obviously people having to be able to make changes and plans at the moment. So I think as well, we've done a lot of work and also getting a lot of routes ready. So, if routes do open up, we have kind of communication ready to go the second a route opens up. So I think it's been an interesting experience actually in terms of having content ready, but then being able to optimize the content when you need it, being able to turn it on, turn it off, turn on the media, turn off the media. So I think we've all learned to be highly adaptive and flexible. But I think, yeah, we're been doing a lot of support for British Airways around that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know. I just took my first flight and it was definitely, after being used to flying, every month and then just flying for the first time after, a year and a half, it's definitely a new experience and you have to prepare yourself for that.
Yeah, we did a shoot a few months ago with the crew from British Airways, and actually for a lot of them, it was the first time they had been back. A lot of them were flying that night or the next day. So they were so excited to be back in the air again. You realize that, that is their absolute passion, helping people fly, helping people go to see their family or their friends or go on vacation. So they were so excited to be back at work. It was actually really kind of humbling seeing how much it meant to them and seeing, that serving people was so critical to them. So that was a great experience.
Mm-hmm. I see we have Jeanette on now.
Yes, Jeanette is trying to change her background. Seriously. Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay, great. Hopefully you can see me in a minute and I will have the right background on. Hold on one second.
So Jeanette's actually just taken a trip. She's visiting her mother in Spain right now. So she has taken a trip.
Okay. I am. Here we go.
And Fiona, have you flown yet?
I have not flown recently. No, actually, I've had family come to see me, but I've been doing, I am hoping to get a flight in a few months' time.
Wonderful. Welcome, Jeanette.
And I'm on brand, look.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, well, I will let you two take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank
so Jeanette,
you.
great to see you again and welcome. So Jeanette is the Senior Vice President at MasterCard for Marketing and Communications here in Europe. So obviously you've been at the very pointy end of travel and hospitality and what your industry has had to step up to do to help everyone over the last year. But I think it'd be great to kind of just talk about that as hopefully people are reevaluating and beginning to travel again, beginning to engage in the hospitality industry, which has obviously been so impacted. What kind of experiences do you see from MasterCard that your customers are actually going to want to engage in this kind of new era of travel?
That's a great question, Fiona. I think, like with all good marketing, it starts with insights. And, our promise is connecting people to priceless possibilities. And that connecting people part has become much more compelling since the pandemic began, whether it's people spending more time with the people than they thought possible, people who have careers spending more time with their children, people not seeing their friends and family or their relatives that are far away but close to them in the everyday. And so more and more we see people wanting to share those experiences, the things that money can't buy, those priceless experiences are becoming very important. And then priceless means more and more different things to different people. We track what we call the passions a lot, the passion points.
Yeah.
And globally, travel is always number one, always across the world. But in the pandemic, we saw, specifically in Europe, we saw music and culinary rise like never before. They grew the most to be number 1 and 2, along with cinema, which is always up there. Wow. And so one of the things that we tried to design in terms of experiences as people start getting back on the road is, do they want to combine that culinary with their trip? Do they want to, well, that's a classic, but do they want to combine their love of sports or a specific kind of experience with their travel? A very good friend of mine, I was talking to her the other day from Amsterdam. She hasn't seen her mom since lockdown. So but this week, she and her mom went to do a cycling trip across France to taste wine. So they're combining 3 passions in one. They're traveling, they're sports, and it's, and enjoying the wonderful things that France has to offer. So as a brand, yes, we're trying to combine those things and create unique experiences. So if people can't travel that far away, they travel closer to home, they can at least have something magical. One of my favorites is, I'm not sure if you know, close to Athens, there's the Temple of Poseidon in Sunyon, which is—
I've been, yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's, it's open air, so it's safe. Yeah. And one of the experiences we offer, one of the very first, when things started to reopen for local card holders, was the ability to have dinner with your family at the temple with a private chef. And so, yeah, it's those kind of things for people who've lived in Athens their whole lives, but they can experience Sunyon in a way that's, deeper and just beautiful.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point, because it's almost like, even to your point now, maybe you can't travel as far, maybe now we can't so easily at the moment, fly to Asia or something. But I guess to that point, you can still make a kind of memorable experience kind of near you. How are you seeing travel panning out? Are you, as domestic travel picking up? What kind of patterns of travel are you beginning to see kind of mapping out as people start to travel again?
Well, we have an economics institute that helps us kind of track certain patterns. And it's an interesting question because there's 2 worlds. There's the business travel, and there's leisure. And in the business space, there's always those essential workers who have to travel for their job, to visit a plant or what have you. And instead of coming back every couple of weeks, now people are going 2-3 weeks to the same location, taking care of everything and spending a bit on leisure. The small and medium enterprises, that travel's picking up quite a lot. So that's one that's coming back quite quickly. And one of the main reasons for that is, unlike a big company, they don't have internal sales meetings. They don't have that much of the additional big kind of T&E spend. So they have to see their customers. That's the way they've always been, very lean. But there's so many small and medium enterprises in Europe that makes a real difference. What we see a little bit taking some time to come back is corporate travel. It's taking a good 3 to 4 months lag. And it's definitely not because people don't want to travel. But I think also, and maybe some marketers on the phone can also appreciate this, we have to manage expenses as we get out of coronavirus, and that T&E line is attractive for finance. So it's
a big question, I think, isn't it? Is like, will corporate travel at that? I mean, you're right. I think SMEs, because they always talk about, don't they? They do business with people, not companies. SMEs, so they need that connectivity. But for the big corporations, in a sense, Zoom has enabled meetings of scale. You can actually do a conference for 10,000 people if you want to, in a sense, without all having to fly to Vegas or wherever maybe in the past you would have. So it is an interesting question, isn't it, about what do you think will happen to corporate travel?
Exactly. You're spot on. So the future of work and the future, especially of events, is going to be interesting, because even in our space, like, how do you create? Is it when you're face to face, that's the time that you're going to designate to take a trip to see people to brainstorm, when you're creating a big idea, and then the operations can be done virtually. And that's exactly right for business meetings, especially the B2B side. The scale that you reach, the lack of people having to get on a plane, go somewhere, come back at night, etc., and the flexibility it provides for speakers as well. You can have, so there's an amazing analyst that I talk to all the time, and he's in Singapore, and I used to see him once a year. And now we call on him all the time for travel insights. And so, it's that flexibility and that scale of digital, I think, is here to stay. But corporate travel will come back. It just will be redefined and reskinned. And I think we're all trying to think of, how do you get the best of both when things come back?
Yeah.
Networking, creativity, plus the digital scale, flexibility, economies, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of balancing, isn't it? The access, to your point, and like the kind of globality that actually has been the benefit, isn't it? We've all worked across time zones and global teams this last year, but it is fantastic to see people and go to new places. Yeah. I know you mentioned when we chatted earlier this week about that you started to look as well about a new sort of segmentation about why are people starting to travel? Because I think one of the things you talked about, like your friend, like you go to see your mom, but you want to combine your passion point. But what are you kind of seeing as like the reasons that are helping people like start traveling again?
So I think one thing we call escapists, a segment we call escapists.
I think I'd like to be one of them. That sounds great.
I think many of us have an escapist inside who come out every once in a while. These are people that just need a break for 3 or 4 days. They've saved quite a lot of money during the pandemic. And I mean, not huge amounts, but amounts that would have gone to a high price ticket, air travel ticket, or high for them. Yeah. And so instead they're traveling locally, and they're spending more on culinary or on health and well-being or relaxing or whatever it is. Those are really those are rising, I would say, from before pre-pandemic levels. Those people are traveling more. There are also the adventurers, the people who have always been outdoorsy, and now is better than ever because it's safe, you don't have to worry about it, and people have been confined, so it makes a lot of sense. And at the same time, there's a blended group that blends with the leisure and the travel part, which are the visit families and relatives who I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Many folks, at least even still for the time being, even though we're kind of in a semi back to normal state in some places, they don't need to be in the office right now. And so they can work kind of anywhere. And so instead of visiting their parents who they haven't seen for a while, or their relatives or what have you, they'll stay 4 to 6 weeks in that place afterwards. And they're not on vacation, but they're not in their home base. They're extending that. And based on what is prices to them, they'll be the adventure, or they'll be the luxury aficionado, et cetera, in their own personal time, and blend that spend. I think what is not coming back yet, a little bit like corporate travel in the leisure space, is those pure luxury travels, high net worth travel. Folks who typically go, I don't know, to an island on their own or something. I mean, I'm talking about folks really look for that super 7-star experience, because many of them have second homes.
Yeah.
And they want to feel safe. And it's not exactly easy to get to Mauritius or Fiji or whatever right now.
Like a private jet. Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe that's even complicated. Who knows? So that's taking a little bit of time to come back, as is mass market kind of deal negotiators, people who want to get 4 nights for free, or just significant discount on their cars. That the prices aren't helping them right now, and so they've turned into more of those staycation kind of travelers, that first segment. And that's why you see some countries like Spain, Italy, Germany, Belgium, France, it's very hard to book something right now, because those people are staying put, and they're spending a bit more on things they wouldn't normally spend in, like hotels and culinary, etc. But they're not spending on so much the travel, and they're driving their own car or
Yeah, no, we were talking actually one day about like transportation, to your point, intra-Europe travel. It's kind of like high-speed trains, or as well as flights, as well, but people driving as well. So like the way people are traveling. But it's interesting, isn't this notion of like almost like your savings upgrade? You saved some money, but now you upgrade. But what you're upgrading it on, to your point, is a bit different. I guess for MasterCard, you see everyone spend in that sense, so you kind of know what categories and people are starting to really engage with.
Yes, and also we pull from economic data as well, from domestic economic data. Like we see actually the U.S. personal consumption expenditure, households have saved 17% in excess savings in 2021. In Europe, that the highest savings are actually in Belgium.
Well done, Belgium.
with 13%. And then the UK with 10%, Germany 9%, France 9%. So that's a lot of pent-up spend. And again, how people are spending in things they've become more aware of, spending more time with the people they care about, spending time taking care of themselves physically or mentally, or relaxing, like 1970s vacation, like they used to do, that kind of.
No, I do think it'll be interesting, to see will the wellness sector, obviously spas and stuff have grown enormously as a travel sector last year, but will the kind of wellness sector, to your point, I personally quite like the idea of being up a mountain, in Austria with someone massaging me quite, that sounds to me like quite a good vacation post like this experience. But I think it will be interesting to see what sectors grow over time, because to your point, what kind of experiences will people seek? The workcation idea, though, that you talked about is really interesting, isn't it? Because as people will maybe, to your point, combine seeing family plus working, because I guess working is probably going to be more flexible for a while, certainly, isn't it? Or maybe long term, in terms of people going to the office. Do you think that would be something that you would at MasterCard seek to do, like partnerships with merchants and hospitality, and see as a growth area?
Absolutely. And I think many sectors will benefit from also a hiring and diversity perspective, having a more flexible, less location specific, less rigid hours, being able to accommodate people who have children and work, or single families or what have you, and or just not living in the center of London because that's just where they can't afford it necessarily, but being very creative and maybe being in Manchester and coming to London twice a week, or for those brainstorming sessions, putting it in an agency context. So I do think that there will be opportunity there. I think there's also a way of reconfiguring what works for people, what makes them happy at work, what makes them the most productive. And what's that tipping point of work-life balance? There was a campaign that ran in Canada recently, and they were trying to get people to get back to travel. And one of the most interesting insights was that 40% of Canadians don't take vacation at all.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so they were targeting people. It was super funny. They were targeting people on search, saying, "Is this your only break you have right now?" Or yeah, you need an intervention. So yes, I think people are taking their self-care and just more aware of what makes them productive. I think. And this is hypothetical, but I do think people's sense of time has changed. And where we were fragmenting our time amongst many devices and watching many different things and multitasking, I think somehow the pandemic kind of made us all pull back a bit and be just more considered in how we work, how we live, how we relax. And I think that can be powerful for an experience when you do travel as well, because after many months of not necessarily seeing the world, that's also really powerful.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, isn't it? Because in a sense, people's kind of curiosity to travel, I guess, has in part been fed, but like actually travel documentaries on every, I think, TV channel, Netflix, everything have had incredibly high viewership, haven't they? Because we've like virtually been traveling, to kind of feed our minds and our spirits. But I know MasterCard, you have a lot of partnerships. So how do you think as well, like that, we talked a bit about like, virtual, physical combination of experiences, but how do you think as well partnerships might boost travel and hospitality over the kind of coming months and with you for MasterCard?
Well, I mean, there's many different ways. One way is working directly with municipalities and cities and governments in helping the corridors that are active, the travel corridors that are picking up, making sure that people have as connected travel as possible, keeping it simple for them, stimulating and supporting the small and medium enterprises that thrive on travel, that make the backbone, the majority backbone of the European economies thrive, helping them be sustainable. Adding a sense of peace of mind to travelers with our products. In the debit space, it's clear, it's everyday payment, it's become contactless, it's something people are very comfortable with. When you travel, sometimes credit is more used, and other services like Pay by Bank app are just more local. But I think in order to get to a better sense of ease, bringing all the services of cybersecurity and all of the services that we can offer to people's peace of mind for all our products is what we're trying to deliver on.
I guess during the pandemic, you've almost become like the ultimate insurance for people, to your point. I mean, they've really relied on their MasterCard and, you know, your category to kind of give that extra feeling of insurance, haven't they, really? So it's been quite a burden in a sense and a responsibility.
Yes, and there were many parts of our society which were already very tech savvy. But there are certain segments that have shifted behavior, I would say 15 years of behavior in really 12 months.
Yeah.
And with that increased awareness of digital, with that increased awareness of being digitally included and being online, and the only way to get a vaccine is online, you know, all those things, comes a heightened awareness of cybersecurity.
Yeah.
And because the world has shifted online, more cybercrime has shifted online. And now I think people are more aware that the value a network can bring, an ecosystem like a MasterCard, an ecosystem of the financial construct that's around that, the tech companies that guard the rails, that's become very important to people. And maybe before the pandemic, either people knew, but it was not top of mind, or they had no idea. And so now with security in all aspects online being more prevalent, I think that's also something people value.
And I know MasterCard have done some programs to help people who, to your point, like my 80-year-old father joins his friends on a Zoom each week because they don't see each other. So, but I know like booking travel for my father is actually always quite daunting digitally. So it's not second nature to him, but he has to do it now, to your point, because there's no other way. So I know you've run some programs to help all groups feel included in being able to book their travel. And do you want to talk a little to that?
Yeah, so as a company, so obviously causes and supporting the MasterCard Foundation, which supports billions of people with health and things like that, are very important. So CSR has always been there. But as a company, we believe that we need to do well by doing good, or do good by doing things well. So in the line of the business, how can we help people? Not as a separate CSR thing, but as a company, as a standing operation. And in MasterCard, not the foundation side, but within MasterCard, one of the things we've been focusing on for many years, but especially now, is digital inclusion. And that's helping unbanked or underserved communities that aren't necessarily online come online, have not be experts, but have the basic skills of how to protect themselves online, how to protect their finances online, how to stay safe, how to have an identity even. Even in Europe, there's places that need that. And definitely within Europe, there are segments who have just needed to accelerate in that journey out of necessity. And so we had a wonderful campaign that our UK team created. It was called Nobody in the Dark. It was at the beginning of the pandemic. It was for people who just didn't have that much digital education, and giving them advice, giving them education, giving them the tools to get online, to feel safe. And just last week, July 5th, I think it was, so 10 days ago, I think it was, or at the beginning of last week, we announced that program for 1 billion people.
Wow.
So we announced Nobody in the Dark for 1 billion people to get people financially included by 2025.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Yeah, we're proud of that.
So I guess as you start to think about, like, you talked about, you're obviously a critical part you do is helping the merchants, helping the SMEs, but I know you obviously run marketing and communication. So obviously in your role particularly as well, you're also looking at how can you do innovative partnerships that can talk about priceless, but also support travel and hospitality. So have you done any kind of like spaces in that area over the pandemic?
Yes, and that's a great question. So I think one thing that myself and my team are very proud of is that we were able to support our partners through the pandemic, and it meant a lot to us before the pandemic to have the privilege to sponsor some of the properties we work with. But in a way, it meant more these past couple of years because they are people's passions. So, for example, being a sponsor of Cannes Film Festival, which is a generator of culture for the world, which shows films for many people who don't have a voice, or the most quality films in the world, or the most wacky films in the world. And also
it's always quite varied, Cannes, isn't it? Quite varied.
Everything. And being able to support them, being able to extend that reach was very important. We also sponsor Venice. So in Berlinale, every time, before the pandemic, we would have what we call a masterclass, which is typically the creators of film, the filmmakers who write, direct, cinematographers who create the world of cinema. Wim Wenders for Berlin, for example, partner with us so that we train the next generation of filmmakers. So we would have a session where we would get all these different points of view, and there would be people that inspire these film students, and we would reach out to thousands of film students also through streaming or through programs of each festival that they have, like Berlinale Talents, to take filmmakers who don't have that many means to the next level, give them coaching, give them connections, give them whatever. And last year in Venice, which was the first one that came back, we did it all online.
Yeah.
So we continued doing the master classes, but they were virtual Zoom calls, and we streamed out to the film students across Italy. And we continued the same approach, and we reached 80 million. So we got a big within the cinema space. So that's very important, is to continue to sponsor these great passions people have, and to be with them in a time that it's not so easy, and to prioritize that because it matters. UEFA Champions League, another huge.
Well, a sore point for all England Brits at the moment. I'm Scottish, but even I supported England.
Oh no, I know. Well, here in Spain, you can hear the whole building groaning the song, and it's a passion. It's a real passion.
Definitely a passion. Definitely, yeah.
And even though this season we were still in the pandemic, it was a very hectic season, a very emotional season. It was the Super League and all of that. So we took the opportunity to use the platform, for example, to have different points of view, to have, of course, sponsoring the event and having it reach out and all of that, but with the UEFA Foundation, having kids that, aren't going through the best times in their lives or what have you. We had screens, huge live LED screens with the players as they walked onto the pitch, the semifinals and the final, and they were saying hello to Messi or what have you, and it was kind of like a Make-A-Wish moment, which is lovely. And last year, when we didn't even know if there was a final at all, we did a partnership. We did an activation with TikTok, and it was called Priceless Wave. So you had to do a Mexican wave. You could do it with yourself, with your friends, with your beagle, with whoever you wanted to, and you'd put it up on TikTok, and you'd get the MasterCard Sonic and the frame, and we typically get exposure to viewers who watch UEFA, etc. For 1 billion, like any sponsor. But with that one activation, we got 2 million views and 300,000 waves. So it was a way of bringing a moment of joy. Obviously, a TikTok wave for a few seconds isn't the same as watching hours and hours of football, but we extended it. We gave people a moment to just celebrate the beautiful game. And so it's things like that I think are interesting. Another platform that people couldn't necessarily attend very much last year was the French Open, Roland Garros.
Yeah.
And it was the time of Black Lives Matter that was happening in America. It was at the beginning, and so because people couldn't join physically, we asked Billie Jean King to interview Naomi Osaka, who's our brand ambassador. And at that time, she was wearing the masks and making about people being heard. And so that was a way of engaging people online to Roland Garros, but in a way that's meaningful, and also in a way that tennis stands for, which is gender balance and championing that with someone like a Billie Jean King, who is an icon of that.
Total icon, yeah.
Yeah, so it's coming up with things like that initially were more like digital moments, to more digital content, each time a bit more meaningful. And as we transition back, how do we make a hybrid of those things?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I mean, I guess MasterCard, you've been about priceless for a long time. So I guess these examples you're talking about is almost how do you make priceless experiences in all sorts of different channels, just to your point, all sorts of different segments. I mean, I know we're probably about to wrap up, so I'm going to look at questions, but do you think like you'll very much want, as we hopefully get to travel again, that you'll want to keep these more like using technology, using partnerships to kind of give the scale as well as the physical? Is that something you see at MasterCard will be kind of part of your future mix?
Absolutely, and I come from a high-tech space, so I know technology can bring a lot of human meaning. And so how do you keep the good parts of that connection that's virtual? And especially if it's considered, and it really hits at the heart of what people think are priceless, which is a little bit different. So you have to personalize a little bit. But at the same time, when people have the luck to be in person, how do you make that absolutely amazing? And that's cool.
So I'm seeing a couple of questions coming in. So there's one here, which is like, I think you have a great opportunity to speak to your consumer with real empathy, as if you're walking in their shoes. How are you kind of pursuing the consumer that way to kind of really understand where they're at and what their kind of needs are?
So in a way, what we try to do is we try to support consumers with our products and services in a way, especially more than ever. I mean, it's always been part of our offering, but in the pandemic, in a way that was seamless. Just being there, being convenient, being contactless, being easy, being reliable, being available, being like somebody, like the question is phrased, accompanying them with our product, and then delighting them with a moment or with something unexpected. One thing that we tried to do as well, as much as possible, like many brands, is support small and medium businesses locally, which I think will hopefully maintain because of all the push towards sustainability and organic and all of that. And also the pull of consumers wanting more of that. We really tried to champion local, what makes neighborhoods neighborhoods. That was another campaign. And that was another way we tried to accompany people just in an everyday way. And if they wanted to be delighted, we could take them there. But if sometimes they just want you to be there and be safe.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And then there's another question which says, people definitely want to get out and about again, I think, and they want to have the opportunity to be adventurous. I think this is talking to your adventurer theme, and do things with their budget. So I think it's kind of like the notion, I think, of like, how can people kind of maximize, or how can you help people do the most with what they can within their budget? I think, like, how can you enable people to be adventurous, but within different budget levels?
Well, we have different travel rewards, MasterCard travel rewards programs with many, many, many merchants across Europe and across the world. We have different ways of helping people scale and helping people maximize what their possibilities are. For our card holders, obviously, that we also have the prices.com platform. So that's a place that they can go. That's a place that they can see some of the great ideas. That's a place also where they can find something, like I was saying, like the Sunyan Temple near Athens.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have a hard time finding a really unique experience for them. It might be a tiny house in northern Norway for someone. It might be having dinner on the theater, on the main theater of the Opera House in Vienna. It might be different things. It might be going with your little girl and meeting a ballerina at an opera house. It might be something that's just, going to a game. Different people have different things, but we also try to serve that up. And so if people have something like that already built, it's not expensive. It's something that they can do as a card holder. And that's a magic moment for them and their family. That's also something that, or whoever they're traveling, or just themselves, it's also something that's that we try to help on the budget side to provide those experiences.
Yeah. So I think we're almost wrapping up. But what is your ideal vacation then? What are you looking forward to as a trip when you do that magical trip? I had to share mine with my team yesterday, and I almost started to well up as I was talking about it. But what's your one?
What was yours?
Mine, I used to live in Asia, and I used to flit about tropical islands and stuff. And I think much as I love going home to Scotland, and the Highlands are the most beautiful place in the world, mine was like hallucinating about being on like a tropical beach, powder white sand, sparkling sea, no Wi-Fi, a very cold gin and tonic in my hand. And, just your feet, when that feeling when your toes are buried in hot sand and you're about to walk into the sea. I mean, I could just visualize it. So yeah, that was my fantasy trip, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a good fantasy. I definitely had that one. And I, like many people, I think I went through a journey during the pandemic. There was about 6 months in that my bucket list became very important to me. And walking the Great Wall of China with my children was a must. Going to Greece with them, which I hadn't done, which isn't that hard to do, but I just haven't done it. But I think for now, just as a family, being able to go to Spain and dip our toes into the sea and have a G&T and just relax.
Yeah.
Italy.
I'm excited. My father's coming tomorrow, so I'm excited about that. So yeah, I think we've reevaluated what's most important. But thank you, Jeanette. That's been amazing. So Diana, I think you're back with us.
I am back. Thank you both. That was a fantastic session. I love hearing how MasterCard is really tapping into the culture and bringing these moments to connect with consumers through moments that they care about. And whether it's tennis or Black Lives Matter and all these various things that people are passionate about, it's definitely, a really interesting way for brands to become relevant and meaningful in our lives. And I thank you both so much, and I hope and wish you all well with the travel and reconnecting with families. I know this is such a special year for travel and hospitality. This has been a really great session, and just this whole day of reimagining what travel will look like, whether it's, from these different points of view, from different, from whether it's the City of Venice to MasterCard, and imagining how you're doing this. I know we're all really excited to get back out there and traveling, and I just want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's a privilege, and thank you, Fiona, and good luck tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Jeanette, and it's great to see you. And thanks, Diana, for asking us.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you so much.
I just want to say thank you to all of our viewers out there, and we hope that you will join we have another Brand Innovators session later on today at 12 p.m. Eastern for C-Suite and Marketing Leadership. We will have marketing leaders from Coty, Tiger Connect, Expedia, and many more. So thank you everyone for joining, and we hope to see you again soon.